Good afternoon and welcome to Intermediate Reporting. Our host today is Chuck. He's back from traveling and is ready to take the helm again. So I will make him the presenter, and I believe we will get his screen almost immediately.
We should be goody to go. Okay, you should see the pretty screen in all its splendor. And again, Lori, good afternoon and welcome everyone who's coming on board. This is the Interactive Reporting webinar. Lori, you're seeing what I see here, your title slide here?
I am.
Good. I want to, again, first of all, we know that we run these at 1 o'clock Central, which means for Rocky Mountain people, that is lunchtime. And again, Maxie had a concern about having to skip lunch, so just for her, we're offering a visual treat. And don't forget dessert. Daniel found these just for me. They're bacon chocolate chip cookies, and if you, I haven't had a chance to make them yet, but I will, and I'll report back on the results. So that'll tide you over until we're done. We are hopefully may not fill up your tummies, but we're aiming to fill up your brains with more information about report writing. And again, we've been going through this for the last 3 weeks. And what we'll be looking at today is trying to continue to build on AJ's session last week, and again, thanks to AJ for covering. And we are still trying to get the sound recording for last week's session. It's not posted yet, so normally they're available to download within a day of the session. We're still working on last week's for a rebroadcast. What we'll cover, though, complex expressions, and talking about, again, getting the data in the boxes to put on the report. We're going to review, again, reporting bands, how those work, and discuss those a bit. Report calculations, begin to get into a bit about how to calculate fields on a report. Print wins, which give you the ability to choose when you want to print information on a report, or conditional printing even. And we're going to cover report management. Actually, we're going to jump to page layout first. I should have flip-flopped my order, but we'll talk about page layout again. I think some mention of that was last week. We're going to revisit that. Look at report management again, how when you've got the reports, what you do with them, and then finally look at some special purpose functions. Remember, this is a 90-minute session. We do have a small crowd. I do apologize. We discovered that the invite on this did not go out to the listserv like we thought it did, and so we called in this morning with the reminder, and thanks to those of you who just signed up today. Okay, so let's move on to what we're about. Complex report expressions. And again, before we go any further on this, my little cue now tells me that we want to make sure that you remember that the help file has a great deal of information about report writing. So when you go to the help guide, go to Student Manager, down to Reporting, and then clear at the bottom where it talks about modifying reports, you've got a whole potpourri, a stew pot, a tool chest of different bits of information about how you can modify reports. So again, that is your ACEware in the whole routine that you can get some help with. So, complex expressions. When we talk about complex expressions, we mean that in a report expression box, we put more than one thing. We're going to talk about how you combine. We can use a comma, a semicolon, or a plus key. Those are called concatenators, and so that mumbled word is actually a word. It's called concatenate, or to combine. A given expression can be up to 255 characters long. Notes, if you're using a plus, all of the fields in the expression must be the same type. Think of it as a common denominator when you're doing multiplication or division with fractions. And again, if you're using a comma as a concatenator, you can mix field types, which there are advantages to that. You can embed text inside an expression box if you put them in quotes, and you can add functions to the above mix. So again, a lot of options to you, and we'll start to look at those in a bit. When we're dealing with a combined expression where you have more than one item in an expression box, there are some advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is that when everything is in one box, you can make one select of a font and change it for everything. The disadvantage is exactly that. You can't make individual items in that box, one font italic or one bold, or to use a different size within one expression box. When you're doing conditional printing, if you've got a string series of data elements and you want all of them to behave according to a condition, putting them in one box lets you do just one print when. One of the disadvantages of that is when you put it all in one box is that it's harder to get column spacing even. If you're trying to do charts and tables with one expression box, you may have to use a fixed font rather than a proportional to get your selection even. Lori, we doing okay? Everybody staying with us so far?
Everybody's staying with us.
Okay, well, let's keep on going. Here are some examples of report expressions. So here we have first name and last name separated by a comma, first name and last name with a plus as a concatenator. Here is a combination of a function, field, and a function, and you'll note we're using a semicolon as a concatenator. Here is an example of text plus a name, a field name, plus more text plus another field name. This is an example of a complex expression with a function, although technically that's a single expression. It's got two elements in the function. And here's a combination of a name, text, and a function. So what happens when those functions would execute? Well, if this works, we have now the results of these expressions. So when you use a comma to combine two fields, if they're character fields, it will truncate or it will eliminate any trailing blank spaces. Now I'm going to go ahead and if you look at, I'm going to jump to Manager because I think this is useful to talk about. When we're dealing with a field in Student Manager, for instance, the first name field actually has a total of 15 spaces that you can use. The last name field has 30. When you're dealing with a report and you're using a comma to separate two fields in an expression box, no matter how many blank spaces are at the end of the data in the field, that we have 5 spaces out of 15, it will eliminate the trailing blanks and it'll just put one space where the comma exists. If we use the plus as the concatenator, it will include the literal blank spaces at the end of the first field. So if name 1 has 15 blank spaces, it will give you blanks, put in the next value, which is the H. But this is Chuck of 10 blanks and then Havlicek. And there would be actually, 22 some blanks at the end of Havlicek. Now this is an example using a function and semicolons. Well, the semicolons have a couple of features that are nice. Number one is that it will wrap the fields into a column. So for address blocks, when we're using mailing labels or we're using if you wanted a left justified block of information like a mailing label or an inside address inside a report, the semicolons are a great way to accomplish this. The other benefit about using a semicolon is that if you have a field that does not have data in it, and in my example of my home address, I don't use a second address line. It closes up the line that would have held the blank address and then brings up the city and the state. So if I had the next party in the address was Chuck Havlicek at the business and I might have a P.O. box as well, it would be Chuck Havlicek, 7480 Dyer, P.O. Box 1912, whatever that might be. So again, that's what the semicolons do. They will give you a line feed field, and it will eliminate blank data fields in the sequence. Let's go on down. This is an example where we had text using the plus sign with data fields. Well, you'll note a couple of things. You'll note that in the example, the word first appears, and there is no space between it and the first letter of the first name. That's because, if you'll note, and I'll go back one, we did not have a space between the quote at the end of the T and the quote. You'll note I did put in a space here. And so you'll see that in the example. There is one space between the word last and Havlicek. There is no space between the word first and Chuck. Because if we had wanted it, we would have needed to put a space between the quote and the T. And again, you'll note we've got, again, the blank spaces at the end of the word, of the letters Chuck in my first name field before we start printing the text, LAST, which is in a literal quote. Nice date, and again, the function returns a nice date. Here's an example using commas where we've mixed a field, text, and a function. So, because we're using a comma, the comma eliminates any trailing spaces between or at the end of the word Havlicek inside the last name field, and puts in the text balance due, and it puts in actually a space here, but that the balance due field, GTBal actually formats the number with up to 5 digits, so it would handle up to 99,000. I think it's at least 99,999. So if you've got some big dollar fees, that's not a problem. I'm going to pause a second, Lori. Any questions bubbling up right now?
I don't think so. I think you're doing just fine.
Okay, and we're going to go into a report, and we'll look at some of this live in a minute. So we'll have another chance to go back to this. Okay, here are some tips. When you're typing in field names or you're entering field names in an expression, the uppercase, lowercase, mixed case of the field name does not matter. I don't have this in here, but spelling does. You must spell it correctly. Number 2, whatever you have in quotation marks is literal. What you see is what you get. So if you have something in the text, that's exactly uppercase, lowercase, spelled, spacing, is what's going to appear on the report. Again, here's a review of the concatenators. Comma allows mixed fields. It trims character value and puts one space between the fields. Plus is a literal, and if you're combining different fields, you've got to use a common denominator. You have to convert the data into a specific format, either character or number. The semicolon will wrap the fields. It does allow you to combine mixed fields and closes blank values. In the use of a plus sign for data conversion functions, if we you need to use the plus sign to combine multiple value fields. Here are the data conversion functions. DTOC converts date to character. The string, str, converts a number to character. And the function showTF converts a logical to a character. Now, this is all information, and I'm going to jump back to the help for this. And let's go look at our report functions. So if we were to use the string function, or take a look at what the string function does, you'll note that the string function has 2 required parameters. The expression that you want to convert to a character, the field name in ACEware, and the length of the string to return. That is, how many digits will you want it to return? So that the first one is the field name. Kind of hard to see that. Field name is PY amount. Let me just get this here. The field name is PY amount, and then we have the number of how wide you want it, and then optionally you can include, if you want, decimals. How many decimal places do you want that to display? So for a dollar value where you are using cents, it would be always a number, 2 to give you the 2 decimals for pennies on a dollar value. Okay, let's go back to the report, or to our example. And let's now go ahead and go to Student Manager, and let's bring up a report. And again, one of my favorites, Deadbeat. And we'll modify the base report. And 07. Okay, and we have a couple examples, and I didn't mention this in my PowerPoint, but again, if you are a budding report writer or you want to know how reports work, one of the best ways is to disassemble reports. And again, I was, as a kid, loved to take things apart. Now, my mother would claim putting them back together was never my forte, but if you want to know how things work, ask any engineer and they'll tell you, well, you take it apart. So if you wanted to look at a report to see how things were put together, go in modify mode and start poking around looking at what's in there. Now here's an example if I double click where we have a complex expression. We have the name, the word, we're trimming it, and then we're putting trim again. Now, I have a question, and we don't have PowerPoint or we don't have polling questions, but I'm going to ask you there to respond with yes or no in the text, or question mark if you don't know. Because we're using a comma here, does the trim function do anything for this particular expression? Yes or no, or you don't know. Give me a quick 30-second yes-no response here, if you would. And I'll let Lori read me off what people are saying here.
Well, you don't have an answer yet.
Nobody's even been willing to guess. Come on, somebody give me a guess. Do you need to have, and again, what trim does would be automatically eliminates trailing blanks. So given what I said about the comma, did you need the trim in there, or is that superfluous? Is that just extraneous to this function?
Amy and Mike answered your question with a yes. Everybody
Okay,
else
yes,
says, I don't know or no.
Okay, the answer is that yes, it is extraneous. And what I'm going to do now is, by way of illustration, let's get my arrow back. By way of illustration, I'm going to drag the header down, and then we'll, by clicking on the header band, or the group header band, dragging it down, and we'll make a new expression here, and we'll just put the name fields in with no trim on it. 1, NM name 3. And other than the fact that that's not bold, will they be the same? Absolutely. They are the same exact layout because the comma automatically, as we said, trims the value, any trailing spaces off the first name. Let's go ahead and try this now. I'm going to make some more space so we can kind of have some different examples to play with. So there's the comma space. I'm going to copy the function. If you're working with reports, and again, if I wanted to copy this particular expression, I wouldn't have to go up here, create a new box, paste in the data. I can just click on it, right mouse click copy, and then right mouse click and paste, and I make another copy of that same function. Okay, now let's try using the plus as a concatenator. And let's see what that looks like. Well, what that does is that it includes the blank spaces at the end of the letters Deborah in that 15-character first name. All right, let's try another one. Let's copy this, paste it. And again, you noted I didn't right mouse click. The function, or the copy keys, copy paste, Control C, Control V will work once you have an object selected. Let's try the semicolon key. Putting in a semicolon, and let's look at that. Okay, it's only showing me my first name. Now, whatever happened to the last name? Does anyone have an idea? I'm going to wait and see if anyone, I'll give somebody 30 seconds to respond here. And while they're doing that, I'll make another expression field here. Copy, paste. I'll put that over here under firm.
The consensus seems to be that you need to expand the field because the box isn't large enough.
Expanding the field, okay. And again, AJ, I think, covered that last week, but there are two ways to do that. One is, I closed the arrow. Let me get back. One is that we could actually click on the drag bar and then be able to lengthen the actual field so that it's deeper. And there now we see that we have the fields wrapping. Alternatively, I'll copy this now. Or no, this is the one we made a semicolon on. I will double-click on this and use the Stretch with Overflow option. And the Stretch with Overflow option allows you to wrap if needed. And you'll note I didn't change the width of the actual field. And let's preview now. Control-I, and it wrapped the field. Okay, let's go make another. I'll copy this one. Copy, paste. Now let's try embedding some text. So if I wanted to say the word first, and again, it is literal here, F-I-R-S-T, quote, plus, name one, you'll see that I've got first, and then immediately after that, the letter D. Why is that? Because I didn't put in a hard space after this. Now, what would be another way that if I wanted to put a space between the word first and the first name, would I be able to use a different concatenator and accomplish the same thing? I was going to put a space there. Anybody have an idea?
Early guessers are giving you a comma for that one, Chuck.
A comma. Let's try a comma. Put in a comma. We look at this. By golly, there you go. That comma will put a space in between text. And again, alternatively, we could get rid of the comma, put in a plus, and embed a hard space, or perhaps a semicolon and a hard space, so that we have a little better looking display if we wanted to have labels in the line of a report rather than above the top. Okay. Now, finally, on the name record, and again, this is if there's anything that you can learn from working with this seminar the last few days, that if you need to put in the name of an individual, and you need first name and last name, the best way to do it is not by putting in individual fields, but by using the namer function. Because again, the namer function will automatically format the name nicely. If Deborah had a middle initial, I don't know if I've got somebody with the middle initial in my data. Well, here's someone with the suffix. So we had the first name, last name, and we added the suffix. But that there's Teresa L. We got here. It'll add the middle initial to that. So again, the namer function is a great way to accommodate several things at one time. Okay, I'm going to pause for any general questions, and we'll give people a few minutes before we go in and begin to start talking about the banding issue. I don't have any specific examples of reports to modify here, so again, we should have some time at the end to perhaps invite people to nominate a report they might like to do some modification to.
Chuck, we do have one question that I think is an excellent question. If you have all the punctuation that does the spacing for you, why do you need the trim?
You mean, I don't follow the question. You mean, why would this example be on the report rather than namer in the first place?
No, why would you need the trim command? If there's if the punctuation would handle it, is there a time when you shouldn't use a comma for the spacing or the semicolon?
Oh, well, yeah. That's a hard question to answer because there are times when, well, I can't think of an example right now. This, as we mentioned initially, this is not the best way to handle it, and I'm not sure. Again, some of the reports in here date back 10 years, and whoever might have built this report wanted to be double sure there were no extra spaces, but yeah, that's unnecessary.
I do have somebody that's suggesting that possibly it's when you don't concatenate is when you're going to need the trim function. If you were only using the last name, if you were only using the first name and you weren't concatenating, is that possible?
Well, yeah. Now, if you're not, but again, a field box, and again, if you go back to the idea of let's see if we can get, I'm going to put in just the last name here. When you're doing a report, copy paste. If you're putting in a single field, and the amount of data that you're going to display in a field is a function of the size of the expression box. In other words, how big you built the field expression in a report is what's going to show. I still need to, if I were to crank down the width of this last name field, it's going to truncate Alexander. Now, that's an interesting example. You'll note this field is set to stretch with overflow. I'm going to actually copy it and paste it and remove the stretch with overflow. And now it'll truncate. So we have Alexander in a long field, Alexander in a short field and it's overflowing, and then Alexander in a short field where it's truncating the last four digits. Whether or not we put trim on the last name would not make a difference. The only thing that trim does here is it would have no function because it's the length or the width of the field and the property of the stretch with overflow that combines. One of the examples here, and I'd have to jump to a function, some of the functions that you use in the show functions, which we'll cover later, require you to put in a string of information, which would be in this format, where you're actually combining data fields with pluses. In that case, the idea of trimming would be needed in order to have your formatting come out the way you want. So again, I think that example of when you'd use trim might be when you're putting in an expression inside a report function. And we'll actually cover that at the end of the session. Okay, any other buzz on this?
No, but they like the explanation.
Very good. Okay, well, let's kind of go back to the show here. And print wins. So when you're wanting to do conditional printing on a report, by double-clicking the object, you open properties, and it has a print win. So let's just jump back. Oh, I jumped over. Jump back to that again. So if we were wanting to look at this particular data, and I'm going to change the color of that. The color of that, so we know what it is. Color. Okay, come on. Colorize. There we go. And then I'll change this to a different color. Make it red. Okay. And any object, okay, I've changed the color. Any object that we click on has a print when option, okay? This is an expression, and you click on print when, and you have the options to determine how you want to print. I'm going to close that. Now, even an item like a text field, number of Reggies, has a print when. And again, there are no conditions on this one. Okay. the page number. Now let's look at page number. Again, if you remember from the previous session, this expression, underscore page no, is a system variable that is the page number of the report. Let's just preview and see here. Okay, there is no page number on the first page. Now it does show up on the second page. Well, why is that? It's because this particular text has a print when. And the print when is defined to only print when the variable is not equal to 1. And again, what that will do is only print the page number when it's not on the first page. And ditto on the expression, which is the variable value, has a print when to only print when an expression is true. Now, one of the other examples of a print when, and I'll go ahead and cover this now, is if you wanted to put a note on the report that was a non-printing note. Note this. Okay, if I wanted to put in a note that I just wanted to have for my reference as the report designer, if I put it in as a standard piece of text, it's going to show on the report. However, if I wanted it to be private, I would double-click on it, go to the print when, and I'm going to give a value here that can never be true, which is the period F period or the logical false. And now when I preview, it's not there. So again, that's a non-printing note, a way to print a non-printing note. Let's go ahead and look at the data now. And we're looking at the registrations. Let me close this up. If you'll note in the balance dues, we've got several people who have a balance within this area. Some have a balance and some do not. One of the other ways of generating a print when is if you didn't want anything to show if there was no balance. So we could say due minus paid is print when, and we want to only print when this expression, due minus paid, is not equal to 0. So when we look at that now, you'll note there is no balance showing on the people who are paid in full. Now, if you wanted to get really cute, you could say, well, we want this to pay, and this is bordering on the edge of advanced, but we're intermediate. We should be able to handle this. If we wanted to colorize the value so that a negative is a red and a positive would be a green, we can double-click on this. We don't need to double-click. We select it, go to our color palette, change the color to red, and now it only shows, now again, we didn't do the subtotal, that was a different area. We were just doing the detail line. It shows up in red if there's a balance due. And obviously, if you don't have a color printer, that's not relevant to you for printing. But that is, again, more examples of the print when. Okay, any questions bubbling right now on the print whens?
No, not so far. You're doing an outstanding job answering all the questions before I get them to you.
Okay, let me take another look at these people here, and we've got Learning Exchange. I want to, well, let's go back to that again. Learning Exchange, and I'm going to go next. Lewiston's, Fizzlehurst, most of the ACEware, where's some ACEware people? There's somebody, Doug Brower's an ACEware people here, or former retired ACEware people. One of the other things you can do with print whens, and again, AJ may have covered this in the reporting tool, but you can add graphics to a report, and I think this is useful for like name tags. Could be used actually in certificates. But if I wanted to have an ACEware logo only printing on the people who are ACEware staff members. I'll put that logo on, and right now it's too small. Let's find a bigger logo. That's an icon. I need a bitmap, ACE bitmap. There we go. So now the word ACEware appears on everybody. Well, that's not right. ACEware should only occur when the student's name equals ACEware. And again, we need to note that when you're doing an expression, this is actually where inside the text you must have the exact spelling, spacing, proper case as the firm would be in order for that to respect what you're trying to do. So now let's look at this. Okay, nobody there, nobody there, nobody there, nobody there, nobody there, nobody there. There's somebody who has an ACEware flag on. Ronald Davis is from ACEware. But again, a way to use the print when to put some conditional printing options on your report. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint. Anything popping, Lori?
They'd like to know if they can use something other than a graphic, for instance, an interest code. Would that work as well?
A what kind of code?
An interest code. If interest code equals computers, can we have it print?
Well, and again, you said the print only when expression is true. This is a matter of what fields are available in this report. So the print when condition is a different issue than what it is that you want to print or not print. And the idea of if this is deadbeat report, interest codes are not available to the deadbeat report to make a condition on. But if I had the word canceled, and I don't have the word here, deadbeat, let's cancel this. If I wanted to write the text deadbeat, and I'll make that text big and so it shows up here. We'll make that bold and italic, 48 point. Okay. If I wanted the word deadbeat to appear, but only on people who owed money, you could put in the word deadbeat, put in a print when, and put GTBAL, RG. Is greater than 0. And we have, again, there's Deborah Adams paid up, Teresa Alexander is a deadbeat. Now, I've got the deadbeat in the wrong location because it really needs to be at the course level, which is going to look a little odd. Nothing, there's a deadbeat. Nothing there. Nothing on this, deadbeat on this, deadbeat on this. But you see, I'm using, rather than a graphic, I'm using an image on that. So again, you can the print when is any object, an image, a graphic, a line, a box. You can put a box around something and say only show this box, and we're going to fill this properties of this box. Whoops, cancel. I'll fill this box with some stuff. Format, fill with a little bit of back style. OP transparent, and we'll make the color of this. That's not the one. Print on the box. Background color, kind of a light purple, and we want to send this to the back. Format, send to the back. Now what I'm doing, and AJ would have done this last week, I made a box, I filled it, I want to send it to the back so it's behind the data. But again, I could say I only want that box to show up, do a print when, and I say I only want to print that when the name or the state is Kansas, NMSTATE equal So again, anything that you can find on the report, you can put a print when on. How we doing?
We're doing well. People are asking, though, your screen is just a tad bit small. When you set the print when, is that an apostrophe or a quote mark? Around the...
Let's go back to this.
Around
I used, I used a single quote. When you're putting in text, you can either use a single quote, a double quote, or a left or right square bracket. They do the same thing. So I could have used a double quote here, or, now I have to make sure that's right. So that would be the same thing as a single quote or the left square bracket. Those all evaluate the same when you're comparing text. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, but yeah, good point on that. And the idea that you can either use a quote, a single quote, or the left or right square bracket. All right, let's go back to the slideshow. So we've talked about, remove line if blank, and again, I don't have an example. That would be more for when we're doing mailing labels, but when you're doing multi-line reports, that's useful. Print when, and again, we've covered that. Non-printing note, we've already done that, and again, non-printing note, and again, that's pretty much when you'd use non-printing. Report banding. Now, again, back to reporting. This is covered a time or two before, but the idea of understanding report banding is critical if you're getting into more advanced report writing. And again, this is covered in the help guide. There's a very good section under report modification that talks about banding, group bands, and title summary bands. Quite a bit of information here that's available to you. The group footer and the summary band, page footer, and as noted here before, you can eliminate some bands on a report, but basically the header, detail, and footer are required. Those are minimal standards for a report. So we're going to get here, and how do you add a title or summary band? There is a link under the report tool to say report title summary to add them if they're not there. Grouping bands, again, can be added to the report, but again, grouping bands are all contingent upon the bands have to match up to the way the data is laid out. And I wanted to get to this because to really follow when you're talking about banding, you have to know that banding and the sort order of the report are tied at the hip. One has to follow the other. So in the standard report, which is deadbeat, the sort order is alphabetical by name and then course number by course number within the name. So this is the actual raw data on a deadbeat report. So you see Deborah Anderson 1 course in the report, Teresa 1, Bobby Anderson has a bunch. So you'll see his name multiple times, and now you'll see his courses. They're alphabetical by course number, WWW07, and we went from F to W. Carol Anderson 1, Geraldine 1, Mary Tom, and now Lisa has several reports. So she goes, although there are two Lisas, remember, there's Lisa Twin and Lisa Evil Twin. So here's Lisa report course 1, 2, 3. But again, the banding of the report must match. So the very first group header must match up to the first alphabetical sort that the report has. The second group header match up to the reporting of the second person, or of the second tier of the report. And the second tier in deadbeat is course number after you've done alphabetical by name. So that when you're moving this around, if you're changing the sort order, and we'll talk about Just Do It's next month, or next week, in the advanced session, you've got to make sure that the order will follow the grouping. And again, I'm going to pause a second here, but I was going to go into Manager and actually will modify a sort and show you how that applies within Deadbeat. Anything?
I don't think so, but I think everybody, this is the halfway point between, in a 90-minute webinar, this is a good halfway point for everybody to take 30 seconds, get up, wiggle your fingers and toes.
There you go.
So
All right. We'll take a little bit of a coffee break here for a minute or so. So we'll let you pause and let Lori kind of sort through any text here.
Yep. Just kind of wiggle your head back and forth, stretch the neck. Push those arms out.
Shake out the kinks here.
Yeah, so it is getting to be Thursday afternoon, and we've had a tough week. So we'll just,
close to the end of the week.
Yeah.
We're over hump day.
Oh, thank goodness. Last week was a short week too. That always makes the week after feel like it's a mile long.
That is true.
Okay. And I think I'm all caught up.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's go ahead and we're back live, folks. So let's get back to paying attention. We're going to go in and look at the idea of the sorting on reports. And let's get back to Manager here. I've been fiddling with this report. I'm going to save it, close, save it, and I'm going to call it throwaway because I want to throw this away. T-H-R-O-W-A-Y, throw away. I'm done, and let's go right back and Deadbeat again. Alt-D for my shortcut, modify, I'm going back to the original report. The query, I'm going to use 0 to get more data. I'll answer yes to show my due and paid. And we're back to the report. Now I'm going to do my magic view to look at the actual data within the report. And again, this is the data within the report. And as I mentioned, the primary sort is alphabetical by last name, and then it's over to the right we would see that it's then sorted by course number inside here. And we have 1, 2, and then I think there was 1, 2, 3 as a secondary sort. Now that is the order that Deadbeat provides to you by virtue of it being the Deadbeat report. Let me close out of this. And the headers match this up. We're going to leave this report. File close. And again, I confess, what should I have done that would have saved me this step? What button would I have clicked on this screen that would have taken me back to this particular report? Somebody give me an answer.
Come on, folks, I'm pulling for you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The answer is...
Lindsay was first with Recycle a Report Area.
Good deal. Way to go. Those Texans, they're not as slow as I give them credit. So, Recycle Report Area. So I'll do that now, and we're going to modify, and we're going to do an additional report because it will illustrate what we're talking about. And we're going to pick the report that is the sort by firm, I believe. It's called, we'll do the one, there's a roster format. Roster style generic. Okay. Now, in the roster style generic report, we would pick a big report, we've added a just do it to the beginning of that. And this just do it, and it's a little hard to see, but it's better to see, it's easier to see here than it is if we put it in the edit mode. You'll note that we have an order by, and the order by here reorganizes the order by the course number, and actually secondly by the add date, so that the sort order of this is by course and then by add date. So let's look at the banding. Well, the banding here is co-course, so we'll have all of the records that are within one course will then be shown in a group and then reset. we've got. Okay, so we have a course, and then we have the student. We show the date registered, and then information about the student. Okay, so that the sort order follows. Now, there's a couple of things here that we might want to reference. One is that the add date. If we're doing this by the add date, one of the examples might be that rather than showing the add date when it's the same day again and again and again, let's put a print when on this to say only print it once. Don't print it multiple times. So we go here, we go to print when, and we say print repeated values no. And now what happens? Now, when we have more than one name in the same date, it won't print the value for the second date. So that's one of the examples here. Let's go ahead and remove that so it's kind of back to normal. The other way of doing this is if we wanted to actually group, if we maybe had lots of registrations on a given day, and we wanted to create a new group in here where we could have all of the courses or all of the names under one add date kind of appear in a subgroup. Well, to do that, we would need to add a group. And that's by going up to the data grouping element. And now we'll add RG add date. And whenever you do a group, you have options like, do you want to start each group on a new page or reset the page number for a group, reprint the page header. Plus some options as far as how many, wrapping from one page to another. So we've done that, and we have nothing there, but let's move now RG add date above that. So now we have an add date, we have the people. Now again, the number counting is another issue, but we are counting the numbers and resetting by course, not by add date. And so you'll see the numbers continue on down here for the total number of students, but it will give you a way to show the grouping within that particular heading. Because we've created a header and we put in the add date up above that. That is not a bad idea for add date. Any questions at this point here?
I don't think so.
Okay, one of the other issues we need to start looking at is calculations. And I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint, and I think we've got a couple of examples on that, and then we'll get back to this report because it's a good one to work with. Field calculations. The calculate field option, which will show you when you're on a report, if you point to a field, double-click, a numeric value, you'll have a calculation option, and that's where we are on the slideshow. And that you can hit, that's where we hit calculate, and now we're looking at the results now. Nothing, it just displays the value. Count will count the number of times that variable appears in the field, which is really more like counting rows, if you would. Sum, it does a add, an average, a lowest highest, so there are actually some statistical highest, lowest, average, standard deviation variance. I'm not enough of a mathematician to tell you what those mean. I honestly have never used either of those. But that is what the calculate routine does. And need to clarify. The reset field then is when do you reset the counter? And so let's now go back and look at what's going on in this particular report. So here is a field, and if we look at it on the detail, we see that it's in the detail line, so that paid, we'll see if there's any calculations here, and there are none. And basically it's resetting every time the name add goes on. Well, if we don't do any calculation, the reset really doesn't make any difference. However, let's say that we did to know, and let's look at the group footer. If you put a value in the group footer, and we'll look at the calculations, we see we're summing this value, we made by begin date. So let's go ahead and make one. We'll drag some space. And again, we can just copy these two elements. I'm going to select one, select the other, right mouse click copy, right mouse click paste. I'm going to down arrow key, and I've made those variables down into a subtotal. In this case, I should put a label on it just to kind of help keep me straight. Subtotal by date. And look at this again. We want to sum this, and the reset by add date is what we want. So we have to do the same with paid. And you cannot select a group of values and, change all the properties at once. I've tried that. It just does not work. If you have multiple elements that you're adding, you'd have to click on each one individual. So if that's correct, we should see the subtotal. Okay, 350, 350, 645 is the sum of this. 700 is the sum of this. Math is wonderful when it works. Okay, I'm going to pause a second for questions about the idea of using variables or using the calculations.
Nobody's sending me anything at the moment.
Okay, now, in the report design, what is missing here that would be kind of handy? Somebody give me a shout on the text. What would be nice to have about right here? Whoa.
I know. Can I answer?
No. Okay, what say you?
Marshall says a line.
A line. So we're going to go ahead and draw a line there, and that kind of gives us an idea of what we're doing. And again, those lines, you can overdo them, but a lot of times that can really help clarify a report. All right, let's move on. We're pretty well on schedule here. And let's see what else do we want to do. Page layout. Changing from portrait to landscape. Okay, what would you use page layout for? Well, you change from portrait to landscape. You would you could create columns in the report. You could change your report template if you had a different size piece of paper that you were running the report for. A half sheet or a mailing envelope or a 5x7. And on a network, if you've got multiple printers, you can actually reset the default printer. Well, what exactly do you do when you do the page layout? Well, first of all, you click on File, Print Setup. That takes you to the report page setup. And then if you click on Page Setup, it gives you the actual page setup. So again, here you can change from portrait to landscape. You can change your page size, and then if you wanted to set your printer, you can do your printer. So let's go back and look at the report. I apologize, my cell phone has been going nuts here. If we wanted to go to page setup, and then go to page setup again, and change a portrait from portrait to landscape, that would do that, and you know what that does. The size, if we wanted to use legal paper, or we wanted to make this an envelope, you're able to basically set up different page sizes. And again, I need to clarify, and Lori would remind me, this is contingent upon your printer setup. So depending on how your printer setup is, you may or may not be getting these kind of options. Is that right, Lori?
Yes.
Okay. And again, with the printer here is where if you had a network printer, you could change it to a different printer if they're on the network. Now, I don't mess around with that in my office, so I honestly don't use that very much. Okay, so that is the report setup. Let's keep on moving and come back. Report management. Again, how you deal with managing these reports now that you've got them. And again, what I'm going to do, I've got about 5 more minutes here on the report management, and so we we should have about 20 minutes at the end to perhaps get into some examples. So if you're thinking of examples, get ready to write some text and we'll try to cover them for you. Well, what can you do? Well, we can rename, move, add comments, deactivate, import, and export. And again, if you're not sure exactly what that is, remember we've got a whole slew of routines under the modifying report area that you can go in and use the tools within the report setup to find out about how you go about renaming, importing, and exporting. These are all things available to you within the report guide as to, again, same kind of thing we're telling you today. But let's go back to Manager. We'll leave this report alone. Actually, we'll save it and we'll call roster style generic by, and I'm running out of space, generic by add date. Okay. So, report management. Under Tools Reports, we've got the management tools. Rename, move, activate, deactivate, and actually delete. And again, you can actually use within, I believe, the rename move option, you can mark reports for deletion. So to rename reports, and actually we can kind of preview that with Lori's routine here. You find the report, double-click on the report, and you can give it a new name. From test, you can call it something else. And this, again, is where you can put in the notes. My bugaboo when you're modifying reports is make sure that you document what this report does so that in 6 months from now, you can use a keyword to perhaps search and find out where you put it. And then, okay, let's go back to the report system, the remove name. If we just wanted to change the name, deposit by account number, if I double-click on that report, you have to double-click in the report to get it to fill in down below here. If I want to say deposit by account, I don't know, in rather than the pound sign, I wanted to put U-M-B-E-R. Okay, number. I wanted to use the word num. And then separates by account number. I may want to add additional information now. Add more stuff about description or function. And again, I suppose if you're doing this, you should spell it correctly. The search mode, incidentally, when you're doing the keyword search, is case insensitive, but it does spell correctly, so you will need to do your spelling. And then again, once you do your work, you do have to hit save in order to save that. Hitting the OK button will not automatically save that report. Now, if we were getting rid of a report and we actually wanted to delete it, the thin bar to the left of it will mark the report for deletion. And again, we'll need to save that. And now if we go back beyond there, I believe that report kind of disappears into the wilderness here. Okay, now the other way of deleting reports, and I'll OK here, is that under Tools, Reports, Delete Additional Reports, you can go in more of a raw nature to actually delete reports. One of the ways, this is a great way to manage reports, if you've been working on modification of a report and you made several test copies, well, if you do natural order, the most recent reports that you've done would be at the end of the reporting group. So I know that this last report was a throwaway if I did reports natural order, which is in the order they were originally created, which is pretty much the updated order. I can just find it, hit the little black bar to delete it, and it's taken care of. And then I'll go and I'll do Control F4 to exit, and that report will not be there the next time I go into Deadbeat. Okay, the other area is reports activate, deactivate. And again, I've got a lot of blank reports in here. So if we wanted to go into a report area, and if some of the reports that we ship with the system probably may not be of interest to you. Balance due postcard. If you're not doing any fees in your program, well, you may not want to use that. And again, the whole point of this, deactivating a report does not delete the report. What it does is it just hides it. You cannot see the report from the user-defined reports when a report is deactivated. And again, so you do have to kind of know if somebody wants a report and you're the administrator, you'll need to go back and check your activated reports to make sure you don't have a report that they need that you some time ago had deactivated. Okay, any questions up to this point?
No, I think we're doing pretty well.
Doing good?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to the slideshow here. Moving a report from one area to another. And I don't know if anybody has moved a report. Let me just ask, has anybody out there moved a report from one area to another with or without help from somebody from ACEware?
I'm getting a lot of no, tried to. Oh, there's a yes from Audrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now again, why would you do that? Well, there are some reasons why you could move a report. One is that you might have a format you like, but there's another report area that has a better query set, or you've decided there's a new query you need to use on a report, and it's not there in the old one. Number two, it might have something to do with sorting with a JDI, where you want to reorder the report in order to have it sorted by, as we did with Deadbeat, the course name rather than alphabetical by the name, or the firm as opposed to by the course. And again, there are report areas where that's a lot easier to do. And again, I'll indicate to you that the two areas that are the easiest ones to be... Get back to me. Come on, Chuck. The easiest ones to do that is that when you're doing registration level, it's the one-line, one-reg deadbeat, Chuck's favorite. When you're doing courses, it's the CEU reporting. And again, if you're doing demographics, there aren't a lot of name-only ones. I suppose probably the single-line name record, that's the easiest one if you're trying to reorder listing of names, just straight names, would be mailing labels. Back to our slideshow. And then the other thing is that you may need another field, and that field isn't available in the present area. And again, probably here, if you're exporting, maybe you have a report that's got a lot of stuff you use, and you might want to export from that report. Well, if the field isn't in the area, you can add a field report with an add function, but you can't export unless the field is native in the report. Okay, any popped-up questions?
No, I think you're fine.
Good. All right, let's go now. Again, and this is kind of the caveat that if you move a report from one field to the other, you may have to modify it. And again, typically there is normally some assembly may be required. Moving a report, you select the area where you are, you type in the new report area, and then you have the option to either create a copy or to not create a copy. And again, as we mentioned, you must click Save when you do that in order to save the change you made, because it will not automatically handle that. Would anybody like to see an example of a move, or are you okay with that? Anybody got a yay in there? Otherwise,
give folks a moment to answer.
Say what?
Let's give folks just a moment to answer here. Sometimes it takes a little bit for it to get back to me.
Yeah, slip that open and back and forth.
Yeah. Well, it's running all over the net. Yeah, I'd say you're about 80% of the yes there. Sure, please. Okay,
well, let's jump back then and take a look at this. So if I had a roster, and let's say I wanted to sort a roster in a certain format, then what I'm going to do is take a name roster, and I'll move that to Deadbeat, my favorite area. So we're going to go to Reports, Rename Move, change it to deadbeat. And I'll put a note in here, Shift F2, moved from roster to deadbeat. I'm going to hit the Save button. I did not create a copy because that was my throwaway. So now let's go back to deadbeat and see what happens. Deadbeat, modify. I'm going to modify because I'm assuming I'll have to work on that report. Course number begins with 07. Show me the money, and let's see, I think that was called webinar. Whoops. It was called webinar practice. Okay. The last update was 221, the user Chuck. That kind of gives me an idea of what it was. So there's a class roster. If I look at this, I'll be real surprised if it works. It does not work. Okay, it throws an error. Now, let's go back to Report Writing 101. We know this report probably has issues. You realize that if you're running a report, and if you're the administrator or kind of the key report writer, and someone says, oh, my report's broken, obviously what you're going to do is you're going to modify that report and try to run it using the same query that your user is. And so when you do the preview of the report, the error that it generates will actually take you to the area where it's showing the area. There's something in this query is not working. Well, I know there's a bunch wrong with this report, so I'm not going to do it individually. I'm going to start doing some mass cleanup. These, I know, optional fees are not in deadbeat. Let's see if that cleaned up things. We'll have to go to variables. Anyway, if you're saying, well, why is this an advantage over what we're doing now? ID total, we don't need that. Delete that. An option number. This was probably not a good example. If the count, RGID, the fees, and the wait list, optional fee. I know optional fees are not in total paid. And we've got that. Group fees. But you get the idea here. Again, adjustment fees. I know there are no adjustment fees. Okay, let's see how close we are. RF disk. We've still got a print when problem on a rectangle. And remove the line F blank. We'll eliminate the condition. All right, one more to go. Print when, eliminate the condition. I don't think I saved that. Firm is not found. Well, there's one again where FM firm is in roster, NM firm, so we change that to NM firm rather than NM firm, and again, you have a semicolon there. So what's that going to do? That's going to wrap. ID total is not found, and there's ID total. We have no options. We'll get rid of the options. Get rid of the options. Now let's see how close we are. Group optional fee is not found. This is the grand total. We've got to get rid of that. Grand total. We should be getting close. Finally. But again, you noted we had to do some assembly to that to get rid of that. So again, it can be done. You do have to find like areas, like moving a report from class roster to course reporting would not work, or class roster to faculty. But within like reporting areas, the move is certainly an option for you. Okay, I'm going to jump back because we've got to get to some functions here. Deactivating a report, we've done that. Exporting a report, I think most people have done report exporting. I'm going to skip over that because I want to cover some functions. Importing, exporting, and again, the help file has a pretty good section on importing and exporting. Report functions. Again, actually this motivated Cheryl to do some revision on the report structure to try to organize reports into different functions. And one of the things, and she's saying, yeah, it was actually Chuck was yelling at her, but anyway, there there are some report functions which we haven't covered that are rather unique and really can be used at the advanced report level. There are count functions in addition to mathematical add functions. Count code, count the number of canceled records, count things for a name, count registrations. And again, tools that allow you to be able to do primarily functions from a given area. And like if we were running a detail on names and registrations, we can get a count name easily. But if we're wanting to run reports at a course level, where we were maybe wanting to sort the courses by county of residence, or the county that the course was held in, but we wanted to know how many males and females there were from each county. Well, it allows you to jump over to a different database and count information. This is another one that actually shows stuff from another area. The show functions. And again, let's go back to the help, remind you where the functions are, that under Student Manager, reporting functions, they're all in here. And again, one of the things we're going to be looking at is perhaps to try to have a second way to kind of index these functions by a primary use. What would be the use of a function? So you'll see down here, we've got some count functions. Count name, again, returns the number of names at the class reporting level that match a condition. So if we wanted to find, count the number of Omaha residents in a given particular course, we could use the count name function to do that. There's count reg, count teacher, and then we've got the show functions down here, where you've got show class, which actually shows the summary of courses taken for an individual, or like list classes for a student. There are options, show options, which shows all optional fees for a course. And again, these are functions that allow you to kind of bring data to you within a given report area. Let's go back to our report. Check if something is true. Has class is one that a lot of times can be useful when you're trying to run. Let's go to has class. Returns true or false if a student has taken a class. In fact, I think Lindsay used has class to show people who have completed a certificate class and allowed her to run a report per student that says, student A, have you completed this? And it answers yes or no without having to show an individual class on there.
And
Okay.
Lindsay says it's lovely.
And again, I was impressed with her ability to put that together. And then there's also some other special ones, the was-is function, which, let's get back to the report to show that. The was-is function is a tool, I'll get rid of this, that allows you to display the results of what the query is. So was-is plain will give us, I think, the query that we selected, which I believe is, let's colorize that real quick. So we know what that is. It's RG course equals 007. That was what the query element was that we used to run this report. The was-is function does have some nice kind of options on it that actually allows you to add different parameters to return the field and the value, the query name only, just the value, the query name, and the report name. So it actually, if you're trying to print reports, sometimes you might be trying to print a portfolio of reports that you have a 3-ring binder for, and this is actually shows the query, and it tells you what the report area was that this report came from. The double, I think the double plus, one of those, actually shows you the query that was used, the report area it's from, and the actual name of the report, webinar practice. So again, that the was this function is nice for documenting your reports. Okay, back to the slideshow. I'm trying to get through where we've been. Okay. We skipped over the exporting here, so I'm going to pause. We've got about 5 minutes here. Somebody give me a heads up on whether they want to ask some questions, or I think the report, I've got the help guide reference down here. If you need any coaching about importing or exporting reports, go to the help guide. Let the help be thy guide on that. And I'm going to ask some questions or see if there are any report categories people would like me to beat on.
Well, Donna said she had a question, but no question has come through. So, Donna, if you're trying to ask a question,
and Lori, you might see if there's something you'd like to add, or you think I should go back and review here.
I think you did a good job, and I'm glad we made this 90 minutes. I know it was a little long for some people, but there was a lot of material in this. And
yeah, we had a lot of information to cover, and if Maxie's watching, I hope Maxie, that hamburger and those bacon chocolate chip cookies held you up on that. So, incidentally, if someone is really serious about bacon chocolate chip cookies, I have an honest-to-gosh website with an honest-to-gosh recipe, and again, I'll try those sometime. I love bacon, but I just haven't had a chance to cook them yet. So,
can you talk about the middle part of the print when screen for a moment? We covered the information at the top, but not at the bottom.
This part in here.
Yes.
Yeah, now that one, print when in the first band of a column. If you were doing and let's go in, and I'm trying to think now, a header. Here's wait list. Now, this is an example, perhaps. This is the wait list, okay? Although that may be print only when true. That doesn't exactly give us much to work with. Group header on the name. Print when. So if we don't print, well, here's an example. The print when. So we say we only want to print we can say to only print in the first band of a new page column. If we had a name with multiple, well, let's see if we can. It basically allows you to control views when you move from one record to another within a column, and you'll note a new page if you're doing multiple pages. It would only print one per page. Let's try that. Let's try something here. I honestly haven't used it much, but we'll try to make it real quick here. If we put a header name, and we double-click on that. Okay, that's just straight-up name. Okay, so it's going to show name. Now, if we were to make that to say it only prints, no, we don't want to print repeated values, and we only want to print in the first band of a new page, it should, I think, only show once. Name. Now that somehow I got print relative to the top. That's giving me, well, that's not working quite the way I thought it would here. Print repeated values, yes. Now when you print, and again, the issue about this is print repeated values. You'll note unless you print no, you don't have any options to choose these. So this only applies if you're choosing the not to print repeated value. But honestly, I just haven't done much with this particular area. Generally, the repeated values area is handled by moving the data to the header and not putting it in the detail line here. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, this is the deadbeat roster that we're running now. The other thing is, well, again, the other thing you'll note, the group header, this is an change the page, and we're running out of time, but when you go to the group header, it has your start each group on a new page. Because the sort order on Deadbeat is alpha by name and then by course, the results of this are, let me get back to close. Yes. I blew the report. When we're looking at this, every different time the name appears, it's on a new page because the course number changes. So this is a perfect example of how the sort by doesn't match with the sort by does not match with the group headers on the report. And again, we're running out of time, but I will change the print when on this group expression. I'm going to remove the start a course on a new page. So it shows name, course, name, course, name, course. And now let's see if my print when on this, say print repeated values in the first band of a column. There we go. So name appears only once, and until we get to the next page, it's not going to appear again. That's an obtuse way to get to there. But that is the story there. Okay, I'm going to also move the data about the person down here into detail, and we'll show you again what the naked report is showing. And again, we're running a little bit over. So again, Adams, Alexander, Anderson. Because it's in the detail line, and there are more lines for that one person has multiple lines, it'll show every time. Now, if we did a print when on this and said, don't print repeated values, no. That should, okay, Bobby Anderson appears once, he does not appear in his subsequent courses down the list. And again, you see how screwy this looks, because we don't have our banding lined up with the way this data is laid out in Deadbeat. And that's the difference between the design of the core data that comes back to course roster from what it comes back to in Deadbeat. Okay, I'm going to pause. Questions?
Well, I'm thinking that you've got most of them, and people are beginning to say thank you and leave us. So. Yeah. Well,
we've covered some heavy stuff here, and again, you guys hanging in there is good. And again, we've done complex expressions. We've pretty much done most all of these in there. And again, these are not things, you're not professionals yet, guys. You got to practice on this. The thing, again, I didn't mention, I'll remind you, to learn how to do reports, take an existing one apart. Work on a copy of the database, and again, remember that working in reports, if you can go in and play with it all you want, and when you close, just say no. Just say no, and you will not have broken anything, so that you always can play and not hurt anything. So, again, we thank you for coming. We'll be around a few minutes. We're going to shut off the recording here now. The next webinar is, and I have my time right, it is